What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM The Key. We are broadcasted on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. So go and like the Facebook page and go subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is where all my content is on. But if you're not able to watch the video, you can always listen to the podcast later in a rebroadcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. It is Monday night. This show is going to be rebroadcasted tomorrow morning from 2 to 3 on WQEE. Don't forget, I have my weekly segment with Ryan O'Neill, 8:30 tomorrow morning on WQEE. And a special announcement, I'm going to be in studio at WQEE on Friday from 7 to 10 for the Ryan and Radio Penitentiary Show. I'm excited about that. And another announcement I have tomorrow at Happy Hour Sports Bar Grill, Thrift Behringer and I will be live for the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. And we have got a number of who's who when it comes to guests. I can't get into all the guests, but it's a huge guest list. And you can catch a replay of that show on Wednesday's show. I've got a special guest on tonight's show. It's Phillip Jordan from the Wiregrass Daily News Sports. He is out of Dothan, Alabama. He is the production manager for 96.9 The Legend, and he is the producer for the Scoreboard Show as they do high school football. Hey, we got a big high school football game as Dothan is taking on Central. We are going to preview that, and we're also going to talk about the weekend in college football. Got a Monday night football game going on tonight as the Seattle Seahawks taking on the New York Football Giants. Seahawks are leading in the second quarter 7-0, and they're a very good football team. As a San Francisco 49ers fan, little nervous about the Seahawks. I actually dislike the Seahawks more than I dislike the Cowboys. Yes, we do have a massive Sunday night football game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. I remember when I was a kid that the Cowboys broke my heart. 1992, 1993, and then, yes, the 49ers went and bought a championship in 94. And then it was the Packers who broke my heart in 95, and they ended up playing the Cowboys in 96. That was the last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl, but thanks to Neil O'Donnell, because he did throw 2 interceptions to Larry Brown, then he got that big contract with the Oakland Raiders. But that's neither here or there. Barry Switzer was the coach. The Cowboys were a great dynasty when Jerry Jones took over as owner, and that combination was a perfect marriage, Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson. And the Cowboys could have won at least 5 Super Bowls in the 90s, but their egos got in the way of business, and Jimmy Johnson was fired. In comes Barry Switzer, and I did not like the move at all. I did not like the fact that Dion just decided to leave the 49ers in 94, and he'd go over to the Cowboys in 95. And then the Cowboys with the triplets, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith. The Cowboys are not back to that level yet, but their defense is scary. And I think that this is going to be the biggest test for Brock Purdy. It's a primetime game, Sunday night football at Levi Stadium. Yes, the 49ers are at home, but they have not faced a defense like this. The 49ers defense has dropped off slightly. I still think they're a good defense, but they are not a scary defense like they have been in the past. They're missing some key pieces from last year's team like Jimmy Ward and Ashiz Al-Shire. And they're also missing Charles Omenihu and several other players, players that just they could not afford, that they just let go, like a guy like Kerry Hyder. I mean, they had some good players on their defensive line. Now, Javon Hargrave is a pretty good upgrade, and Nick Bosa yet only has 1 sack. I'm interested to see that Dallas Cowboys offensive line, if they're able to keep Dak Prescott upright in the pocket. What the Dallas Cowboys need to do is just feed the ball to CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott needs to find them anywhere he can, because I remember CeeDee Lamb torched the 49ers in that playoff game. But has there been a better running back than Christian McCaffrey? I mean, he has been absolutely amazing. It was a year ago to this day that the Carolina Panthers traded away Christian McCaffrey for all those draft picks. Anyway, I believe the 49ers won that trade. A lot to get to here in the show. Another jam-packed high school football week. Week 8. We got the Battle of the Brucelli Jug, probably the best rivalry in Columbus, right up there with Carver and Spencer. I think that those two rivalries, it's hard to compare, but on the private school side, it doesn't get any bigger than Brucelli, the Battle of the Brucelli Jug. Brookstone, St. Ampichelli. It's going to be at Dimal Field. You can catch it on Viking Live. Thrift Barringer Rick Beach will be at Kinnett Stadium for Northside taking on Harris County. Harris County's 5-1, and they have entered the top 25 poll, according to Max Preps, for 5A schools in Georgia. They are ranked 23, and that is pretty amazing. Despite what Harris County went through last year with a 2-8 season, they did make the playoffs, but they have really turned around their season. Second-year head coach Tommy Watson, and he's got Levi Watson as a quarterback, and that Harris County team, they made a statement by beating Sandy Creek on Friday. I'm going to be at Creekside Christian Academy at Calvary Christian. I'm excited to be calling a Calvary Christian game on the campus. Head coach Emmanuel Brunson in his first year, having a good season. They're 3-3. They have been undefeated playing GAPS teams. I mean, you got to look at it that way, that they can compete with all the GAPS teams. This is their first region game in the GAPS as they try to duplicate what they did in 2020, winning a state championship for the GAPS. I believe that Coach Brunson is the coach that can take him to the mountaintop. And Calvary has really had a tremendous athletic program under the guidance of athletic director, head coach Steve Smith. And then on Thursday night, I'm going to talk about some of the Thursday night games. We're not going to be calling any Thursday night games, but you have a loaded slate of games. Starting at Kinnett Stadium, you have Northeast, 5-1. They're having an amazing season, taking on the Kendrick Cherokees, who are 2-4. Down at Otis Spencer Stadium, you have Southwest, 3-3 on the year, taking on the Spencer Green Wave, who are 4-2. They could really have separation in this region if they can get a win. And then it's homecoming for the Troup County Tigers. They are 5-1. They're taking on the Raiders of Riverdale, who are 0-7. And then we are going to get into all the high school action on tomorrow's show, and we're going to talk about it on Friday as well. And what I want to do now is I want to talk about the Major League Baseball playoffs, because we have the playoffs that are starting on Tuesday. And I made a mistake on yesterday's show. I said on the show that they would reseed the playoffs. That is not true. I had to look it up. They are not going to reseed the playoffs. So if the Diamondbacks pull off the upset against the Brewers, they're playing the Dodgers. The Braves are going to get the winner of the Marlins-Phillies series. And I mentioned on the show anybody but the Phillies. I do not want to see the Atlanta Braves take on the Phillies. But if they do, they need to take what happened last year as a lesson learned and find a way to beat the Phillies. You want to beat your hated rival. And the Phillies are definitely a hated rival, especially when the Braves dynasty ended, when their division run ended in 2005. Yeah, the Mets won a division, and the Phillies just would not stop rattling off division titles in 07, 08, 09, and 10, 11. They were a dynasty, but they only had the one World Series in 2008. They could have won multiple World Series titles. I remember Cole Hamels was their best pitcher. That core team with Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Pasito Polanco, Shane Victorino. I was talking to a Phillies fan, Carlos Ruiz, great catcher. I mean, this was a juggernaut of a team. And the Phillies, I think, disappointed that they only had the one World Series in the early 2000s, the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, 2010, that time period. But I remember their starting rotation. It was crazy. They had Cole Hamels, the late Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, and Roy Oswalt. I mean, are you kidding me? You got 4 aces, and yet they could not get the job done. So, yes, anybody but the Phillies. We got the Texas Rangers. How about the job that Bruce Bochy has done with the Texas Rangers? No, they did not win the division, but they're taking on the Tampa Bay Rays at 3 p.m. tomorrow. The Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Minnesota Twins. I expect the Blue Jays to win that series. Remember, all 3 games are going to be at the home field of the lower seed. Arizona taking on Milwaukee, the 6 seed taking on the 3 seed, and then the Marlins taking on the Phillies. I love this quadruple header action for Major League Baseball. It's absolutely fascinating. And Major League Baseball in the playoffs is here. The Braves are still the odds-on favorites. But I would not be shocked if the Houston Astros, they are the number 2 seed. They're peaking at the right time. Winners of 4 straight. They got Justin Verlander back. The Houston Astros, they could make a huge run, even though the Baltimore Orioles have the overall number 1 seed. You never underestimate the heart of a champion, even if they are a lower seed. Just look at the Houston Rockets in 1995. They were a 6 seed, and they were able to pull off some upsets, including to the Utah Jazz, the Phoenix Suns, San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference Finals, and then the Orlando Magic in 4 games. I'll never forget Game 1, Nick Anderson missing those free throws. Anyway, that's neither here or there. I'm getting off subject. I'm talking about basketball. Still a Houston team. The Houston Astros, I think, are the dark horse to make it back to the World Series. And that would be, 3 straight years in a row? Incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It seems like they have been to the World Series every year, except 2020. They at least make it to the ALCS. And I got to go into the history books to see how long it's been. It's been absolutely amazing. You know, they won the World Series last year. They went to the World Series in 2021. They went to the World Series in 2019. They went to the World Series. They won the World Series in 2017. The Houston Astros, are they a dynasty? I mean, I was happy for Dusty Baker last year because Dusty Baker, I kind of wish he was coaching the Giants. I mean, he was his first managerial job was with the San Francisco Giants back in 1993. Still to this day, that was my favorite team as a kid, the 93 Giants. Sorry, the Braves just broke my heart in 1993 with 104 wins. And also another player who broke my heart, Solomon Torres. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so I didn't get a chance to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Jets on yesterday's show. I did give a score update. You know, I do my show Sunday nights, Monday nights, and then it gets rebroadcast to the next day. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs, they did win 23-20 over the New York Jets. I believe Zach Wilson played his best game. It wasn't good enough. And the Jets started to get physical. And even when you have the Chiefs on the ropes, Patrick Mahomes throwing picks, I mean, it was ugly. Patrick Mahomes still could put on the Superman cape and win a game by himself. And it doesn't matter if the Chiefs are down by 3 scores. You saw what Patrick Mahomes did in that Super Bowl. I mean, they were down by 10, that 3rd and 18. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. Look, I'm not a Patrick Mahomes hater. I don't think that Patrick Mahomes is the type of player that he's a villain and people don't like him. He is a very likable guy. It's just that when he's playing your team, it hurts because he could really snatch the heart out of your chest for your team. I mean, that's what he did to the Jets last night. It was a valiant effort. And it was a good game. And, you know, Taylor Swift was in attendance. I mean, I didn't count how many times they showed Taylor Swift on the screen, but I'm sure that they showed her a couple of times. Anyway, I'll have to look at the replay. The one thing I did see on the replay for Disney Plus, I had to go and watch the Toy Story Fun Day Football live from Andy's room. I thought it was pretty cool. They have the toys out there and all the Toy Story characters, but a little continuity error. The people who created this event, I'm not sure if they finished watching the end of Toy Story 3. I'm just going to throw that out there because, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't Woody and Buzz and Rex and Bo Peep don't they all belong to Bonnie? I'm just saying. Anyway, live from Andy's room. It was fun. It was pretty cool. It was nice to see. But, they do stuff like that just to get the kids excited. And it was creative, too. I mean, I like seeing stuff like that. I really am a fan of the Nickelodeon Slime Time. I mean, I would love to just sit down and watch a football game with my two daughters, and that would probably get them to be motivated to watch football. I actually think that my girls will probably sit down and watch football with me now that Taylor Swift is going to be in the stands. Definitely every Kansas City Chiefs game. It's going to get massive ratings. Every Kansas City Chief game from this point on out is going to get massive ratings. I mean, I know there's a rule in the NFL that you can't televise all these games, but the Chiefs do have a lot of televised games. Anyway, I do want to throw it back to high school football because they did pass the whole NIL for the GHSA. And what does this mean for your average student athlete? Well, the name, image, and likeness, that means that they could get paid if you purchase a jersey. If they sell high school football jerseys with their number and their last name, or if they shoot a commercial, they can get paid. I'm starting to get some mixed feelings about NIL at the high school level. Some people love it. Some people do not like it. It still might be a little too much, but not everybody has adopted it yet. And it's just for the GHSA. Alabama has not adopted it yet. I know they're getting close. I'll talk to Phillip Jordan later and find out if he's got any inside information about the AHSAA adopting NIL. And the private schools are not doing NIL. I haven't heard anything about that, but I want to keep you informed on what's going on as far as NIL for the high school level, especially for the GHSA, because it's a real thing. It's here. High school football does make money. And these kids, they're stars. Some of them are stars, and they have been just in the spotlight since their junior high days. And I don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other. But if they are offering it, if they're letting these high school football kids get paid for doing a commercial or being on a billboard, I'm all for it. Anyway, that Sunday night football game, that the Packers-Jets, wow. I mean, I couldn't believe that. Hey, it is the month of October. Typically what we do in the month of October, I try to break down all the games that are going on, especially in all the major sporting events that's going on. We got the WNBA Finals. We got the New York Liberty taking on the Las Vegas Aces. The Liberty have not made the WNBA Finals since 2002. The Las Vegas Aces trying to go back to back. And man, that would be great for the city of Vegas, having the Vegas Golden Knights and the Vegas Aces getting championships, multiple championships. We could start calling Vegas the city of champions. NBA, we do have a preseason game that's coming up this Thursday. The Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Dallas Mavericks. I'm hoping to have the play-by-play announcer for the Atlanta Hawks, Steve Holman, on the show in a couple of weeks as we preview this upcoming NBA season. Have the Hawks gotten better or worse since they don't have John Collins anymore? Sadiq Bey is going to be the starting power forward more than likely. I like to see the development of A.J. Griffin, and I do like to see Bojan Bogdanovic actually shoot the ball more. He's coming off the bench. I think that Bogey could be up for sixth man of the year, and Clint Capella just has to stay healthy. I like Okongwu as a backup center, and the backcourt of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young just needs to learn to play together. And, if they have any chemistry issues, hey, this is a full season with Quinn Snyder as the head basketball coach. My expectations for the Hawks coming into the 2023-2024 season is the second round of the playoffs. This is what I'm used to. We have been spoiled since 2008. The Atlanta Hawks have been to the Eastern Conference Finals twice in the last 10 years, but they've had an incredible playoff run since 2008. And really, it was that core group of players: Al Horford, Joe Johnson, Josh Smith, Mike Bibby, Marvin Williams, Zaza Pachulia. That core group of players that stuck together for an entire decade was why the Hawks had an incredible playoff run and made it to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2015 and 2021. It has really been fascinating. All right, so what we are going to do, we're going to go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, I will go ahead and have some more sports, because there are plenty of sports to talk about here in the Sports Beat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key. College football week 6. We've got the Red River rivalry, Oklahoma and Texas. Remember, Texas defeated them 49-0 last year. This is such a great tradition at the Cotton Bowl, the State Fair. You have two undefeated teams. You got the Longhorns, you got the Sooners. Both are going to be joining the SEC next year. You got Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma. You got Quinn Ewers for Texas. The winner of this game, I think, is in the driver's seat to represent the college football playoff and win the Big 12 outright. The Big 12 is down this year. TCU is down. Baylor is down. Oklahoma State is down. So it's really Texas and Oklahoma. And I like the addition of UCF and BYU and Houston and Cincinnati. It's nice to see. But yeah, the winner of this game is probably going to win the Big 12. That's what I think. Hey, we have college football on a Wednesday night. What? Jacksonville State, who's having a great season, 4-1 on the year, taking on Middle Tennessee State, who is 1-4. And then Florida International taking on the Aggies of New Mexico State. Thursday, we've got Sam Houston taking on Liberty, 4-0 on the season. Liberty, that was the team that Hugh Freeze coached last year. And Liberty's doing pretty good this year with a 4-0 record. Western Kentucky taking on Louisiana Tech. On Friday, we got Kansas State taking on Oklahoma State. A very disappointing 2-2 start for Mike Gundy and those Oklahoma State Cowboys. And then Friday night, Nebraska taking on Illinois. Something's got to give. Both teams are 2-3. On Saturday, some of the ranked matchups. We have LSU taking on Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. Missouri is undefeated. LSU is 3-2. And LSU is only favored by 6.5. I still think LSU wins this game. And then you have Washington State taking on UCLA. Alabama has to go to College Station to take on Texas A&M. This is unheard of. Alabama's only a 2.5-point favorite. Normally, normal Bama is about a touchdown favorite on the road against a pretty good SEC team. Texas A&M is unranked. I mean, Texas A&M should be ranked, but they lost so badly to Miami, they dropped out of the rankings, and it's hard to try to pick yourself back up and try to get there. I mean, they've beaten Arkansas and they've beaten Auburn, but that's not good enough to the voters to actually get put back into the rankings. All right, well, looking at some of the other ranked matchups, how about that Notre Dame-Louisville game? That is going to be incredible. 7:30 at Papa John's Stadium, and Notre Dame, once again, is going to be tested. Kentucky and Georgia, I think Kentucky is going to give Georgia a game in the fourth quarter. I think that this is going to be a close game. It's been close before. I remember a game where Georgia barely won. It was a defensive struggle, and it was a monsoon. But I think Kentucky can run the ball. Ray Davis has just had an incredible game against Florida. Kentucky has proven that they could play with the big boys in college football. Devin Leary, he's going to have a good game. This is one of those games where, yeah, I'm going to be sitting on the couch and watching it. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff at Sanford Stadium, and I think that Georgia is going to win, but it's going to be a very close game. Georgia is going to give Georgia fans a scare. I think in the next couple of weeks, with the exception of Vanderbilt next week, they're going to have their fans on pins and needles. I believe they're going to be on pins and needles for Kentucky. They're going to be on pins and needles for Florida. They're also going to be on pins and needles for Ole Miss. Those three games, I still think Georgia's going to win because they have better players. But Georgia is going to have to find a way to just utilize their ultimate Swiss Army knife, Brock Bowers, to try to get it done. And ladies and gentlemen, I am super excited about my next guest. He is a host of the Wiregrass Daily News Sports. Please welcome once again to the Sports Beat, my dear friend, Phillip Jordan.
Richard, how did I get here? It's always
Phillip,
always good to come
what's
on
going
with you.
on, man?
I just know the Monday evening, topping on to the Sports Beat.
Yeah, I can't hear you. You'll have to speak up. And just check your mic for a second, because it might be something on my end.
Let's see.
Are you good?
Can you hear
Let
me?
me go ahead and remove you and get you back in there. We're having technical difficulties with my guest, Phillip Jordan. We're going to go ahead and try that again. Phillip, can you hear me?
I am here, Richard. Can you hear me?
Phillip, you there?
Hold up.
Once again, having difficulties with the audio. But no worries. I will get Phillip here on the show as soon as I can. I was running, one second. I was running updates on my phone, and now I'm running it here on my computer. So what is going on? So, All right. I'm hoping to get Phillip back on the show. I actually had to take my my headphones off just so I can. Let's try this again. 3 times a charm, Phillip Jordan. Come on. It's all right. That's why we do this thing. Phillip, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but that's weird because I can't hear you. Anyway, Phillip, if you can, just go ahead and tell everybody your brief history on how you started the Wiregrass. Your podcast that you have called the Wiregrass Daily News Sports. Just tell everybody a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Wiregrass Daily News Sports. Something we've been doing for a few weeks, but now we went to a daily show, basically talking sports in Wiregrass, high school football, and we talk Alabama, Auburn, Troy, Florida State, because Tallahassee is not that far from Dothan, and a little bit of SEC and other stuff. Sports. The tagline is sports that people in the Wiregrass that are interested in. And like I said, it's daily. You can check it out at the wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcast. It is part and connected to the radio station. We're doing Dothan Wolves football, 96.9. So it's kind of all merged in together.
Well, Philip, I can hear you now. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was kind of a technical difficulty on my end. You were coming in fine. I actually had to listen to the playback. You sounded great, so thank you so much. Philip, we are going to go ahead and talk about this massive game. I mean, I never really get hyped up about a game, but when it's one of our teams in the Chattahoochee Valley taking on your Dothan Wolves, of course we have to hype this game up. It's Dothan taking on Central. Dothan's 5-1, and their only loss was a 1-point loss in overtime to Auburn. Dothan has been firing on all cylinders. They defeated Smith Station 66-0, and now they're coming into Garrett Harrison Stadium with a lot of confidence. Philip, tell me, what are the keys for Dothan to get the upset victory over the Central Red Devils?
You know, during our broadcast on the pregame, we do our keys to the game. And when they played Baker, I went into it with this. I said, turnover, win the turnover battle. Because I went into that game thinking Baker versus Dothan was going to be a high-scoring game. Because when you look at Baker, who they have offensively, you have Josh Flowers, who is a commit to Mississippi State. Their running back is committed to Jacksonville State. They have a receiver in Bryce Kane that's going to Auburn. They have another receiver that's going to Troy. So you said, okay, these are some offensive weapons. They're averaging 40 points a game, all that. And what? Okay, but it didn't turn out that way. Dothan won that game 35-14 this past Friday in Mobile. So I'm going to go with the same thing here. I think it's turnovers. It's a turnover battle. And I'll probably say the same thing Friday night for Dothan, because this is a game where I think you've got two high-powered offense. Look, Central has got college players, Division I players, all over the field. I mean, everybody knows Cameron Coleman, the 5-star wide receiver, 9 touchdowns on the year. I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. Defensive lineman Isaiah Faga.
That's correct.
That front, all right, good point for me. They have a solid running back. Their quarterback Andrew Alford, a little
all world.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something about Andrew Alford. 20 touchdowns. Nobody's heard of him because he transferred from Brookstone, which is a private school in Columbus, Georgia. This kid, you get him under the right system with head coach Patrick Nix. You know about Coach Nix, Phillip. He was the quarterback at Auburn in the early 90s. I mean, he is a quarterback whisperer. Look at what he did with Jalen Epps. Look at what he did with his two sons, Caleb Nix and Bo Nix.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers: 20 touchdowns, 1 interception, 67% completion percentage, a little over 1,400 yards. And we know Central likes to throw the ball. A lot of teams, especially in high school, they're going to want to run the ball. That's kind of like their identity. This team is different. They want to throw the ball over the place. Last year when these two teams played in Dothan, it was a one-score game. And really, what happened in that game, Dothan got behind the possession. And they just were playing catch-up the whole time. But I think the final was like 35-28, something like that. And I think that was actually a game last year for Dothan, even though they lost, that they felt, okay, we can play with the top teams in the state. And they did with Central. Just kind of like this year with Auburn, losing in double overtime. And I think with the win against Baker, Dothan's going to come this game confident. They're not going to be worried about going on the road. They just did that going to Baker, going all the way to Mobile, 3.5. And Richard, they were not only in Mobile, they were on the west side of Mobile. They were a stone throws away from being in the state of Mississippi. That's how far away Dothan went. The Dothan fans will travel. There will be some Dothan fans there in Phoenix City on Friday night. I can assure you that. But that's the key. It's going to be the turnover battle for Dothan, which Dothan doesn't really throw the ball a lot. So the interception, not really a big worry. But that's kind of like what I'm looking at. And of course, the Dothan team getting their running game going with Marion Peterson and A.J. Alexander.
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask. What are some of the key players that we're looking forward to seeing for the Dothan Wolves?
Now, I talked about Dothan doesn't throw the ball a lot, but Sam Broadway, a sophomore, mind you, a sophomore, their starting quarterback, he can be dangerous in the run game. I believe against Prattville, he had a long rushing touchdown against them. He's a tough runner too, physical runner. He's not scared. He's not afraid of contact. He has thrown just for 333 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now, when Dothan throws the ball, The receivers to look out for Jalen Corbett and Jaden Barnes. Jaden Barnes is also an impact in the run game, but Dothan's run game is A.J. Alexander and Tamarian Peterson. According to Max Preps, Tamarian Peterson has 541 yards on the season, 8 touchdowns. He averages 108 yards a game. A.J. Alexander, 454 yards rushing on the year, 91 yards per game, 7 touchdowns. Now, if you want to look on the defensive side of the ball, Kavion Dury is 4 interceptions on the year, and 2 playmakers to look out for, Zach Walker and Gabe Smith. Gabe Smith made a huge interception against Baker on Friday night. Let me tell you, Richard, he easily just could have jumped up one hand, knocked the ball down. He jumped up, extended his body to pick off the pass from Josh Flowers. That was Josh Flowers, only his 2nd interception of the season. So those are some of the playmakers for Dothan. I mean, there's plenty more out there, but those are some of the big names for Dothan.
Central comes into this game 5-0 as they have been rolling. They're fresh off a bye. They defeated Jag 55-0 on a Thursday night. So they've had an extra day to prepare. And let me tell you something. I mean, Cam Coleman, you mentioned he is the 4-star wide receiver. He is the number 1 recruit in the state of Alabama. He is verbally committed to Texas A&M. But if you're putting all the attention on Cam Coleman, you still got to worry about Dalen Upshaw, the junior. He's got 409 yards receiving, and Dylan Gentry with 302 yards receiving. Andrew Alford has got weapons all over the field. He likes to spread the football around. And the thing about this Central team, remember, they were on ESPNU last year. They played IMG Academy. In fact, they were up against IMG Academy. They had great players like Carmelo English, Tamarian Parker, A.J. Harris, who now plays at Georgia. Tamarian Parker's at Clemson. I mean, they just put players at the next level at Power 5 schools. And Central is continuing to reload once again. I can't wait for this. Is going to be a great game. I know that you're going to be back at the station in Dothan wishing you were in Phoenix City.
Yeah, I will. It's going to be fun. I can watch the stream somewhere, so I can kind of keep along with what we're hearing the guys. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. Like I said again, Dothan's not going to be afraid because of what they went through this year. And look, last year, I still say last year, there's not going to be an intimidation factor. And Coach Kennedy, I am 100% confident that he's going to have the boys ready on Friday night.
Okay, Philip, let's switch gears and let's talk a little college football because a couple of weeks ago we had Separation Saturday. I think it's going to be Reality Monday because the bottom line is, and I've been hearing back and forth between Auburn fans and Georgia fans. Georgia's like, oh, we played terrible. We should have blew out Auburn. Got to remember, Georgia's not as good as they were last year. That was the first road test for Carson Beck in a hostile environment. You knew that Auburn was going to get off the mat after getting blown out by Texas A&M. They were going to throw the kitchen sink. I thought Peyton Thorne played very well for his capabilities. He ran the football pretty well. They utilized Robbie Ashford very well. I could not believe that Georgia gave up more than 5 yards a carry. That is uncharacteristic like for a Georgia defense. But in the end, Georgia decided, you know what? We have the best player in college football. We're going to start utilizing him. And Brock Bowers took over that game. Heartbreaking loss for the Auburn Tigers, but this is a game where they can learn from it. Hugh Freeze, remember, he's only in his first year. Auburn is going to get better. I like what I saw against the Auburn Tigers. I think Georgia's in trouble against Kentucky on Saturday. I'm going to be honest with you, Philip. I think that Kentucky could pull off the upset.
But here's the thing about Kentucky. They don't have the threat of the quarterback run game like Auburn did. Devin Leary is not going to scare you with his feet. And then Ray Davis, now he had a great game against
Ray Davis. Oh, man. Amazing.
That was incredible. And Florida was one of the better run defenses in the SEC going into that game. So it's not like he did that against a bad defense. It's not like he did that against LSU. I mean, everybody's moving the ball on LSU. But, it's easy right now to say, okay, Georgia did not look great against Auburn. They had to pull one out in the end. I I just have a hard time picking Kentucky to beat Georgia. They've struggled in this game. They just have. I mean, because I've always say this. It was like when Alabama was dominant. If you play like Alabama, it's hard to beat Alabama because they practice against against better players during the week. Same thing with Georgia. So I have a hard time. But, you talked about Auburn. I look at it, too, the way you're kind of looking at it. I see a positive. No more victories. You always want to win a football game.
Of course.
But the fact is, we know the talent gap between Georgia and Auburn right now is pretty huge. That was coaching. Hugh Freeze is coaching, the defense making plays, interceptions, especially the one by Jalen Simpson. I mean, that was his 4th interception of the year. Now, I'm a little bit different on Peyton Thorne than you. My issue with him right now is I think he holds on to the ball too long. I think a lot of the times when he gets sacked, it's just because he's holding on to the ball, especially early in the Georgia game, all throughout the A&M game. That was an issue. Here's a stat for you. That was the 6th straight game, Auburn versus a Power 5 opponent, that they did not throw for over 100 yards, dating back to last season. Yes. So that they're struggling there. Now, you can't put all that on Peyton Thorne because there were some drops. Auburn receivers dropped. And I saw somebody put up a stat that of the 9 incompletions that Peyton Thorne threw Saturday, 6 of them were drops, especially the one to Malcolm Johnson, the back shoulder throw. That's when Auburn was up by a score late in the game. That would have kept the drive going. Who knows? They could have scored. They could have put the game away. But Brock Bowers was the man. I mean, I think Auburn fans will be glad next year they won't have to see that guy because he will be in the National Football League. But, yeah, it was like, man, it felt like, Richard, every time Georgia faced a 3rd and long, it was like, okay, Carson Beck, go throw it to Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers took over the game. Hey, that's what great players do.
Let's talk about Alabama, Philip. Did Alabama fix the issues that a lot of people think that Bama had going into Starkville, getting a big road victory, 40-17?
I think Alabama is figuring out their identity. It's the defense. It's running the ball. Jalen Milroe will play action, take some deep shots. But I don't think we really will know until this Saturday if those issues are fixed, because I don't really know if Mississippi State has a great pass rush. We saw what Texas did against them, and then South Florida did it too. Right now, this year, my biggest concern in Alabama is not the quarterbacks, not the receivers, it's the pass protection. A&M has had 2 straight weeks where they've had 7 sacks. I believe they had 15 tackle for losses against Arkansas. So you're looking at an A&M front that can get after the quarterback. That this Saturday is going to be the test. Can Alabama protect Jalen Milroe against that Texas A&M front? That's going to be the big test for me. I think defensively they're fine. They're one of the best. I think Alabama just right now is having to turn back the clock a little bit. Go back to being kind of like the Alabama they were in the early Nick Saban days. Run the football, play great defense. The days this year, they're not going to blow somebody out like 50-0 and just be dominant in the first half. It's going to be a slow build, but yeah. So as a cop out, I know, but I'm just kind of waiting for this Saturday to see if that problem was fixed.
Well, the last time Alabama went into College Station, they were upset by Texas A&M. And
Zach
last
Calzada.
year,
Zach Calzada.
There you go. Didn't he play for Auburn? What happened? I thought he was going to play for Auburn.
He was on the roster. He never actually played.
He was. Yeah, that's right.
He was supposed to be the guy to replace Bo Nix last year. And then he never
They went through a quarterback carousel. TJ Finley, Zach Calzada. Oh, man. It was a mess. Thanks, Brian Harsin.
That name.
Oh, my. I know. He does not. That name just, it's like Auburn fans, true Auburn fans, and you know what I'm talking about. They feel that Brian Harsin really set the program back a couple of years. It's kind of like Derek Dooley at Tennessee.
I don't know if it's that bad. At least Derek Dooley knew what he was getting into. At least he knew like the atmosphere, the environment. Brian Harsin sucked the energy out of the Auburn fan base. Like he had a guy that talked down to the local media. I don't know. He just the passion for Auburn football was not there. I mean, Auburn fans were kind of empathetic with the whole thing. But then you saw when Cadillac took over how it changed. Auburn,
Oh,
the
yeah,
love, the passion,
absolutely.
the Auburn family's back. Hugh Freeze has went into that too. I love how they come out with the arms locked. That dates back to Tommy Tuberville times when Auburn.
Hmm.
They did that with Cadillac last year, and they're doing that still with Hugh Freeze. Uh, yeah, Brian Harsin was. And here's the thing: I don't think Brian Harsin is a bad football coach.
Now,
He was
look at
just
what he did at Boise State.
he's just a bad. He was just a bad fit at Auburn.
Yeah, it was a bad fit for Auburn. And I think Auburn's going to be fine. Looking at the SEC, how about that? This was my favorite game on Saturday night. Ole Miss taking down LSU. Did you
Arena
watch that game
football.
at all?
Oh yeah, I watched the whole game. Watched every play. Arena football at its finest.
Yeah, it was.
And no offense, everybody Columbus. I know everybody loves their Columbus Lions.
Oh, I know. Big shout out to the Columbus Lions.
Where you're at, I love it too. I love arena ball, but I always make that joke when, I know a lot of people like those kind of games. I don't mind them in the 30s, but sometimes I really want a little bit of defense in my football. But there's no excuse for LSU to be this bad defensively. Look, going into the year, I had questions about the secondary. Okay, but I thought the front seven was good. Harold Perkins, Mikal Wingo, Mason Smith, just to name a few. You've got guys up front. You've got guys at linebacker that should be able to
get NFL players.
Yeah, to get after the quarterback, stop the run, help out the secondary. But, man, they couldn't stop Ole Miss for nothing. I mean, and now LSU, and you look at it, they've got 2 losses, but only one of them's in conference. So they're not out of the SEC race. They're out of the playoff race because I do believe the SEC is down this year. And a 2-loss SEC team, not while last year had LSU upset, had not lost A&M that last game of the regular season and had beat Georgia in Atlanta, maybe you could have got a 2-loss team in last year. I don't think you can this year, especially with all the other teams around the country. But I mean, and for Ole Miss, look, I'm going to have to say it, Richard. I'm going to do something on your show.
Sure.
I am going to eat some crow. Jackson Dart is playing good football this year. I have not been a fan of his, but I got to say this. Now, last week against Alabama wasn't great, but he has shown in some games that he showed in this one. Man, he was awesome. Close to 400 yards passing. I know he went over 350, 4 touchdowns, 50 yards on the ground. Quinshon Junkins, man, he cut loose. 177 in the game.
He did.
So that was a big win for Ole Miss. They couldn't have a loss there. And now LSU's got to go to Missouri. And look, Missouri's playing well. That's 11 o'clock. Hey, Brady Cook is playing well at quarterback.
He is.
If Jackson Dart can do it, why can't Brady Cook do it? And when you got Luther Burden at wide receiver too, I think LSU's going to win his lost shutouts. You know what the bad thing about it is? They wasted another great Jaden Daniels performance. 414 yards, 4 touchdowns, 99 rushing, 1 touchdown. Man, if they didn't have 2 losses, he's a Heisman candidate, without a doubt.
Oh, absolutely. And they got a pretty good backup quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, too, that can get it done. Yeah, LSU has been a disappointing team. Clemson, 2 losses already. I mean, it's over. LSU, luckily they only had 1 loss that was out of conference. LSU could still somehow, if they beat Alabama and they hope that Ole Miss loses, they could end up playing for an SEC title. But, LSU has really got to get off the mat. And I think, and this is my opinion, Philip, that Brian Kelly is as good as his assistants. When he left Notre Dame to go to LSU, his assistants didn't go with him. Marcus Freeman stayed at Notre Dame. Tommy Rees became the OC at Alabama. Do you think that Brian Kelly's success at Notre Dame was because he had really good assistants?
I think you can say that, but I think that's every coach. I think that's a big problem with Alabama, honestly. I don't think the staff is as good as they used to be. I know somebody you're a fan of and you pay attention to. I mean, Josh Pate brought that up a few weeks ago, that Nick Saban's the same guy. It's the people up under him that are not the same. And with Brian Kelly, I mean, his assistants help, but he's had different assistants at Notre Dame, and he's been good at finding them. Now, I think he's going to find a new defense coordinator. I think Matt House has to go after this year. I mean, that's just plain as day. Because, you watch them play, we all know offense is not the problem at LSU. It's just the defense is holding them back, especially the pass defense. Like, again, I said, you got Harold Perkins. Let's look at it. You only got Harold Perkins for 1 more year after this year. Because he was a true freshman last year. He's a sophomore now. You probably only got them one more year. You need to take advantage of that. Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, look at the receivers they've got on this team. I mean, they've got talent all over. LSU should be better. The Florida State
Malik
game was one
Neighbors.
thing. They shouldn't be losing to Ole Miss. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, I think it's a look in the mirror week for LSU, trying to figure out who are we, what are we, and again, the defense. I mean, I've said it probably. If someone was playing a drinking game every time I mentioned LSU defense, Richard Day would be passed out not watching the show right now.
Oh, all right. Let's move on to a team that's down in your neck of the woods. You cover the Wiregrass Sports, the Troy Trojans, the defending Sun Belt champions. They ended up getting the win against Georgia State. I was talking to Chris Blackshear today. He covers the Troy Trojans. And we were talking about how that was a big win for the Trojans. And I know that you've been talking about it on your show as well. I mean, how impressed are you they got the big win over the undefeated Georgia State?
Last week on the show, on Fridays, me and Matt Lowe, he's with Phillip Media. He used to be with Lindy Sports. He comes on with me every Friday, and we preview the weekend. And we picked that game. We both picked Georgia State. I did too, because Derek Granger plays really well against Coastal the week before. Their running back Marcus Carroll, I believe going into that game, had already had over 500 yards rushing, so a lot of offense. I was like, okay, Troy's going on the road. This might be a little bit difficult, but man, Troy's defense played. They forced 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions on both opening possessions for Georgia State in both halves. And you know what was the most impressive thing? At the end of the game, Troy went on I forget the plays and the yardage, but on a drive that lasted 8 minutes and 15 seconds. They were up 21-7. So you're thinking in that moment that Georgia State's thinking, okay, we stop them here, we get the ball, we score, onside kick, we can tie the game. Troy scored, Kamani Vidal scored the touchdown. Troy goes up 28-7. Richard, do you know how many seconds were left in the game when Troy scored that touchdown?
Looking it up now. How many?
6 seconds.
Yes, not enough time.
Yeah, they held the ball that long, and Troy is like 19-3 when Kamani Vidal rushes for 50. If he's rushing for 500 yards in the game, look out. 50 yards or more in the game for Kamani Vidal. Troy is 19-3, and he had 76.
And I just want to say something. A big shout out to Josh Pate. I'm going to steal this from Josh Pate, and that is a padlock stack brought to you by Phillip Jordan.
Hey, do you have the chalice?
I don't have a chalice of supremacy yet. The many times that I've plugged the Late Kick podcast with Josh Pate on my show, I just don't think he watches, and it's okay. One day
you should get him on the show.
Hey, now there is an idea. Now that would be a cool idea. But before I let you go, Phillip, we're just having fun here in the show. What is your opinion on the XFL and the USFL merging?
Oh, I love it.
First of all, is it official? They haven't really said it, did they?
So last week, both leagues put out a statement that they plan to merge. There's probably some red tape or some regulations they have to go through to officially merge. So they're trying to do it. There's a lot of rumors out there about it too, how it's going to work. Everything I've seen, it's not going to be 16 teams. It's not all 16 teams won't survive. One reason you got 2 teams in Houston. Both leagues have a Houston team. The Roughnecks in the XFL and then the Gamblers in the USFL. I've seen some stuff online, which is all rumors and speculation, nothing concrete, that the Gamblers would probably be the one that stayed because of the history with the USFL.
Right.
Another thing I've seen, maybe 12 teams last, and they go to the hub model. A lot of stuff I've seen, it looks like maybe like Daryl Johnson, the USFL, their people would still they would kind of be at the head of it, but they bring some XFL stuff in with it, some rules and stuff. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's the better fit, because I was fearing if you have 2 spring leagues like this, they're going to cannibalize each other. They're going after the same players. Now you merge all together. Now some people are going to lose jobs, which is unfortunate. It always is that. I kind of think, I wonder if the USFL model is the way to go. The hubs, not having every team in their city, it's got to be more financially stable doing it that way. You don't spend as much money. I know some people don't like it because they don't like seeing a game with no people in the stands. But I feel like for the future of spring football and alternative football in these leagues, I think it's best. They did put out. I saw somebody put the news out though that they did apply. The USFL people did applied for the trademark and patents on the National Spring Football League. So it looks like if this does happen, that may be what the league is called.
So that's what they would call it. I don't know. I think the USFL has a lot more history. They've been around longer than the XFL. I would like to see it called the USFL. But really, when the XFL came back, I really was hoping it would be the 2001 edition of the XFL. I was a big fan of that. The Las Vegas Outlaws, he hate me. I love the XFL back in 2001. I mean, that was when I was in college. I was watching it, and it was Jesse the Body Ventura as a color commentator. I mean, he's a lot better than RG3.
RG3 says, I mean, he puts his foot in his mouth on some stuff. The only reason I could think I would prefer to just stay the USFL. I think branding is better, but also you're merging two leagues, two companies. Okay, then if it's called the USFL, then it looks like the USFL won and they just took the XFL. Because you look online, I don't know if you ever see it, Richard. There's heated discussions between people who are fans of both leagues. Like there's some people who only watch the XFL and they hate the USFL and vice versa. Now there's a lot of people in the middle like myself that watch both. I just enjoy it. I enjoy both products. But I think doing it this way, it kind of, if you do rename the league, it kind of says, okay, we have merged, not just one league taking over the other.
Well, I think the interesting thing about the USFL in the 1980s, and I did watch the 30 for 30, is they were trying to compete with the NFL. I mean, they stole Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker would have been a great NFL player if he would have got drafted, and he played for the New Jersey Generals. Jim Kelly, Reggie White. I mean, he played for the Memphis Showboats. I mean, Steve Young for the LA Express. I mean, I couldn't believe that the USFL pulled it off. They were getting these top college players to go play for the USFL rather than the NFL.
Yeah, they were paying a whole lot more money, and then it was kind of like a thing. Like back then, you played 4 years of college, and then you went to the NFL. Well, Herschel Walker started where, 3 years. Now, of course, now they're not going to try to. They can't. Nobody can compete with the NFL. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to be a developmental league or a minor league system. But yeah, back then, I used to watch games. Friday nights, I was in high school, and I was in high school in the early 2000s. But Friday nights, look, I didn't have a car, Richard. I didn't have nowhere to go. They would replay 2 USFL games, so I used to watch them on there. I had no idea what it was. I remember asking my parents about it, and people I knew. I said, "Oh yeah, that was a league that ran in the 80s. They had good football." So I'd watch the 2-hour reruns.
Phil, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Good luck this Friday. Maybe Dothan can pull out the victory. I mean, but one thing I've learned from my past, I'm not picking against Central ever again. I've been criticized for picking Central to lose to Enterprise, and they just blew them out 48-7. So no more. I'm going to be picking Central the whole way, but I am rooting for Dothan just to have a good game, and I'm excited about this game coming up Friday.
Yeah, and too as well. It's going to be fun. I don't pick high school games. It's just something I just don't do. I just, I talk to all these coaches. I kind of feel like, there's a little bit of a friendship involved, or
of course,
camaraderie with a lot of the coaches I talk to. So I made a rule. I pick college games. I pick NFL games. I pick anything else, but high school games, I don't pick them. I give my keys, and that's about it. But I'll say this: it's close to a pick. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dothan Wolves win on Friday night.
Wow. Oh, okay. I know you don't pick games, but
that's about the closest to one
you're
going to get from me.
Yeah. It could be like a scenario. I see both teams pulling out the win. Here are some of the keys for that team to win the game. They have to do this, that, and A, B, and C to win the game. Anyway, it's always great. Thank you once again, Phillip Jordan, for coming on the show. Love to get you back on in the next couple of weeks.
Always down for it, Richard.
All right, that was Phillip Jordan. He is a host of a podcast called the Wiregrass Daily News Sports and covers everything sports related in the Wiregrass area, which includes Dothan, Enterprise, Troy, Rehoboth, Abbeville, Eufaula, all those. I hope I'm getting some of those names pronounced right. All right, that's it. That's our show. Hope everybody has a great rest of your night. And we're out of here. Bye, everybody.